Turns out my boyfriend 22 male is related to my ex 27 female, and I'm scared he will break up with me. About 3 years ago I used to date this girl S. Her cousin was in my friend circle and S eventually started hanging out with us. We just clicked. We would talk hours on end about similar interests. And it was like she was everything I was looking for in a woman. I eventually asked her out and even made her aware that I was bisexual. She became my girlfriend and she reassured me that she was okay with my sexuality. Well, a few weeks after our 1-year anniversary, she started becoming a little distant. She would also be quite secretive with her phone and she would come home from work really late. The place she worked at would close at 7 and she would be home around 11. When I questioned her about this, she would either say that she was texting a friend or that she was go out with a friend, which is why she came home late. I trusted her, so I believed her. I finally figured out that the friend were multiple guys she would find at bars or on dating sites. Her friend, who was not part of our friend circle, told me after her and S had a falling out. As you can guess, I broke up with her. When I had talked to her about why she did it, she said it was because she was bored of our sex life, but that she didn't want to tell me to not hurt me. Like WTF. I ended up telling our friend circle about what happened. They ended up berating her and eventually stopped hanging out with her, even her own cousin. S then started texting me that she missed me and that what she did was a mistake. She wouldn't do it again and that she just wanted me back. I blocked her because I knew I would give in. That wasn't enough though, because everything kept reminding me of her. This aching feeling in my chest would always appear and I hated it. I didn't want to keep living like that. I was able to move away to another state and find the fresh start I wanted. A few months ago I met my now boyfriend Jay. We met at a club and we ended up going back to my place. We exchanged numbers the next morning and began meeting up more. We then started hanging out outside and I wanted our relationship to be something more. It turned out he did too, since he asked me to be his boyfriend and I accepted. It's been 7 months and I love him with my whole heart. We don't share a lot of interests, but he tries to get involved in mine as much as possible. We go out on dates often and we explore our bedroom life whenever we can. Here is where the issue lies. Jay went on a trip to visit his family since they live in another state. I was more than okay with it and told him to go have fun. A few days after he went for dinner with his family, which he was really excited about because he would get to see his older sister. He sent me photos he took that night and I noticed S on one of the pictures. I was so shocked that when Jay sent them to me I asked who it was. He explained it was his half-sister. I was freaking floored. I wanted to FaceTime him, but he was still at the dinner, so we waited for him to go back to his dad's house, which is where he was staying. I explained to him my relationship with S. He didn't take it that well. At first he thought I was joking, but then I was able to convince him that I was definitely not. He ended up crying and I had to do my best to calm him down. It broke my heart because Jay barely ever cries. He said he felt horrible. He told me he wasn't sure if he wanted to continue our relationship because this would definitely put a strain on the relationship he currently had with us. I told him that we should talk in the morning when he was feeling better because we shouldn't make any decisions now, especially when I wasn't there in person. He thankfully agreed but said he would talk to us in the morning. I hung up the phone a few hours ago, but I couldn't sleep. It's the afternoon and Jay still hasn't texted me back. I don't want to lose him, even though us dating will possibly mean us hating him. FML. I just need advice on what I can do. Update. Hi there. Not sure if anyone will read this update considering it's almost been a year, but a lot has happened and I have been quite busy this year. I also kinda kept delaying this update because I didn't know how to fit everything that occurred into one post, but I tried my best. Before I start though, thank you to those very few kind strangers who gave me advice. Even if there were a few words, it still helped me calm down and know what to do next. At the time that I was dating S, my ex, I had only met her mother. S explained to me that her father had divorced her mother just before S had been born. Her father had remarried a few years after and eventually had 3 more kids with his new wife. At first, S had regular contact with him since her father had her every other week, but according to her, when he had his first kid with his wife, that would be Jay, she saw him less because taking care of a newborn was a lot of work. From what I remember, she didn't give any more specific details, but she did say that every time her father had another kid with his current wife, S would see him less. She had told me she felt replaced because she was supposed to be the one getting her father's attention, and that led to her limiting contact with her father to the point she would only talk to him over text every once in a while. S never mentioned it again since it was a sensitive topic for her. As for how I never knew before that S and Jay were related, Jay did eventually talk to me. I will get to what else he said in the update, but he provided me with context. When Jay mentioned to me that he was going to visit his family, he didn't tell me about having an older sister until the night he went to have dinner with his family. Once I knew about it, I was slightly weirded out that he hadn't told me earlier. I was going to ask him about it either way, but I decided to wait after he finished up with the dinner since he had mentioned the dinner and his older sister while he was in the car with them. Then you know what happened next. I was so shocked that at the time, asking him why he hadn't told me about this mystery sister was the last thing on my mind. Once I got to ask him about it, he basically told me what I already knew, which is that S had very limited contact with their father and even less with his other kids. J also mentioned that he had only met her a few times in his life and that she barely ever spoke to him. She had only recently started interacting more with J and his family because her mother had recently fallen ill, which led to her needing to be hospitalized. This will be relevant later. Of course, J's father found out and he invited her to the dinner in order to somehow show her support, and S accepted. I'm still not certain why when she used to have such bitter feelings, but I suppose she was willing to give her father's family a chance due to what she was going through. I guess I can't blame her since her mother was a very sweet and caring woman. Now that the context has been clarified, let's go on to the update. I ended up doing what I was suggested to do, and I waited patiently despite feeling anxious. I was able to partly distract myself with work, which was hard to do since I had to wait almost 2 weeks for a proper response. Jay didn't totally ignore me. He would regularly give me updates on how he was feeling and what he was doing, but nothing about us since it was taking a while to figure it out. His replies during this time were brief, but I could tell it was because he was going through a lot. Eventually, we agreed that it would be best if we waited for him to get back from his trip to discuss what would happen next. The night before Jay arrived, I couldn't sleep from how scared or anxious I was. There was just this feeling I couldn't shake off, and it overwhelmed me to the point that I cried. Despite me only dating Jay for a few months, I felt so connected to him because we just never got tired of being around each other. Even if I had mostly healed from the betrayal I experienced due to S, the wounds that were left still ached, and Jay helped me soothe them by showing me that I was good enough to be loved. I called my brother, who has met Jay before but didn't know about the situation until I told him. He gave me similar advice to the one I received on here, to be patient and to try understanding Jay. The next day when Jay arrived, I picked him up from the airport, and despite him thanking me, he was quiet, which isn't like him, so I assumed that the worst would come. I drove him to his place where I gave him a couple of moments to settle down before we sat down to talk. We didn't know how to start, so I just asked him why he hadn't told me about us. That's when he provided me with the context above. I then asked him if he had told S about me. He said he did and that her reaction was as expected. He told me that at first she got mad, but because she thought Jay was lying and that he somehow found out about me through her social media. She never took down the post she made of us when we were still together and that he was using it to play a mean joke on her. When Jay assured her it was true, S was silent and she began asking kind of personal questions. Like, how long had we been together? Were we living together? How did we meet? What was our relationship like? Jay gave her answers to all those questions, except he didn't say much about the last question because it did slightly weird him out. S then asked if she could have a few days to think about this, and Jay was fine with that. But he did tell her he would have to fly back soon. That's why it had taken a while for Jay to give me an answer. S had been thinking about what she was told, and by the time she gave Jay a response, he was about to come back. That's why we decided to wait for him to come back in order to talk. Jay was staying with his father, and S would occasionally come to see them to do something together. During one of her visits, she sat down with Jay and told her that she was fine with him dating me, but she would appreciate it if he didn't talk about me, or more specifically, our relationship. Yet she also said that in the future she would love to see me again and become friends with me. When Jay told me this, I was unsure of what to do because I didn't want to expose her as a cheater to her family, but I also didn't want to pretend like nothing happened. But I was willing to be cordial with her if it meant there was no conflict between her and Jay. After he cleared that for me, Jay then had a few questions for me, which is that why hadn't I told him about S? I explained to him that she was someone of my past and I didn't think it was necessary to mention her since I hadn't thought about her for a while. Plus, Jay never asked about my exes and a point of conversation never came up in which S would be mentioned. Jay said fair enough, but then he asked me if I still had any feelings for S. He told me that if he was going to continue our relationship, he wanted to be sure that there weren't any lingering feelings towards his sister. I reassured him that I no longer had feelings for her. That was probably because after S cheated on me, I just saw her as a different person. But I didn't tell Jay about the cheating, just that there were no feelings. Jay had seemed relieved and he hugged me, telling me that he loved me. I did the same and I told him how much he meant to me. There was a lot more crying involved, but we just laughed about everything later. And I think we definitely came out stronger because of what happened. I thought that would have been it, but I would have probably posted this update earlier. But I will say that I've also been kept busy with work, and my brother also came to visit me to see how I was doing. I'm also happy to announce that shortly after Jay's and I's first anniversary back in July, we went on a small road trip together in which I asked him to move in with me and he said yes. I was overjoyed and we quickly got to looking for places that we both liked. It was hard at first since we needed to find a place that wouldn't be too far from our workplaces, and it also needed to be pet-friendly, so that occupied a lot of my time as well. Jay has a cute Doberman and she's the sweetest. I also got to meet his parents as well as his siblings a few weeks after our anniversary without S there, and they welcomed me with open arms. They of course don't know about the history I have with S, and we don't plan on telling them either. Anyway, S hadn't just disappeared. She regularly texted Jay to know how he was, and she would also ask about me, which I found off, but I took it as her just trying to be nice. But then she would try asking Jay for my number. He thankfully asked me if that was okay, and I let him know that I wasn't comfortable with that. He respected that, and he always let us know. But after a while she would ask again, and when Jay would say no to her, another week or two would pass before she asked again. After about the fourth time, Jay told her to stop because I wasn't comfortable with that, and her constant asking was starting to make him uncomfortable as well. S apologized, but she justified herself by saying that was just a joke and she just wanted to see how Jay reacted. This happened before I asked Jay to move in with me. Jay didn't tell us about it because, as I mentioned before, she didn't like it when Jay talked about our relationship. But one day S texted Jay to ask him about it, and when he confirmed it was true, she said, "Oh cool," and she kinda stopped texting Jay so much. Unfortunately, around early September, S's mother sadly passed away from pancreatic cancer. We came to know this from Jay's father, who told us about the funeral that would be held for her later in the year. Jay would be going along with his family to be there with S shortly after I had broken up with S. Her mother had apologized to me for her daughter's behavior, and she told me that if I needed anything that I would always be welcomed by her. I would have liked to keep a relationship with her, but after S had cheated on me, I just didn't want to do anything with her and I wanted to start fresh. I kinda regret it now, considering that S still somehow ended up in my life, and yet the last time I spoke to her mother was when we broke up. The funeral was just last week. S was apparently the one in charge of organizing it. This funeral had been planned out months in advance. I think S just needed time to grieve. I would have gone to the funeral to at least pay my respects to the sweet woman that was S's mother, but I felt like I didn't belong there. Jay reassured me that I didn't have to go and that I could make it up to by making sure his fur baby was taken care of while he was gone. I assumed he would go pay his respects, spend a little bit of time with his family, and come back. But when he came back from the funeral, he sat me down and told me that S had asked him a favor. Jay told me that S had asked him if she could stay in the spare room we have in our apartment, which is usually for when people come over, such as Jay's younger siblings or my brother. S had explained that without her mother being gone, she felt lonely, and this would be the first time she would spend the holidays without her. Jay and I were planning to spend Christmas with his family. Then we would head back to spend New Year's together, as we wanted something more intimate. Keep in mind that what S was asking for was for her to come along with us after Christmas to spend New Year's together. But it doesn't stop there. She then said she would also like to spend a few more weeks in our apartment. When Jay tried asking S why she couldn't stay with their father, she began crying. This whole conversation also happened while Jay's family was nearby, so his father heard the conversation, and he tried calming everything down by telling Jay that he should think about it because it would be a good opportunity for their bond to grow stronger. Jay didn't want to accept for obvious reasons, but with us crying and his father insisting, he just told them he would think about it. Jay told me that he was mainly worried with how I would feel because of my history with S. I was honest with him and explained that I could tolerate being around her for Christmas due to it being a few days but weeks. I don't think I would be able to deal with it. Plus, S being in mine and Jay's space just feels so wrong. At the same time, Jay has been getting texts from his father asking him if he has made up his mind so he can buy S her tickets. He offered to pay since S did spend quite a lot on her mother's funeral. I'm scared that if Jay tells his father no, he will ask questions, and we really don't want to tell him about S and I, but we also don't want to make it seem as if we hate S. Yes, she cheated on me, but I moved past it and I have forgiven her since she did sincerely apologize for what happened. I just couldn't stay with her because I didn't want to stay in a relationship with someone I couldn't trust. Yet me forgiving her doesn't mean I'm totally okay with having her as a temporary roommate. I know she just lost her mother, which is a horrible thing, and I do feel sorry for her, but I just don't think I can be around her for that long. I guess I just want to know how to go about this. I know this update is long, but I tried providing as much context and information as possible so you guys didn't miss anything. I again appreciate those who gave me advice, but I'm just hoping I can receive it again.